My phone buzzed at 6:47 in the morning, and when I saw it was my son calling, my first thought was that someone had died. He never calls before 9. Not in 12 years. I picked up and heard him laughing. Not the warm kind. The other kind. The kind that climbs into the back of your neck and sits there. He said, "Listen, Dad. The movers come at 8. The ranch is sold. We're flying out tomorrow morning, and honestly, you should be thanking me. You can't keep playing cowboy at 73. I already booked you a room at the Sunrise Pines facility in Amarillo. Just bring your medications and a couple changes of clothes. Everything else gets donated." I sat there in my kitchen, holding a coffee mug my late wife had given me on our 30th anniversary, looking at the steam rising off it. Outside, the sun was just hitting the top of the hay barn, painting the metal roof that pale gold color I had loved every morning for 41 years. I asked him to repeat what he just said. Slowly. He sighed. The way he used to sigh when he was 16, and I asked him to bring in the firewood. He said, "Dad, the ranch, the 240 acres, the Buchanan place. I sold it. Closed yesterday afternoon. My wife and I needed the capital, and you weren't doing anything productive with it anyway. $8 million. Cleared escrow already. The new owners take possession Monday." And then he said the thing I won't forget. He said, "Don't make this hard, old man. You've had your run." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It came out of me like a cough, and then it kept coming, until I had to set the mug down because my hand was shaking from it. He got quiet on the other end. Then he said, "What's so funny?" I told him, "You forgot one little thing, son. Just one." He waited. I said, "You can't sell what isn't yours to sell. And that ranch hasn't been mine since the spring of 2019. Not on paper. Not legally. Not anywhere it counts." I hung up before he could answer. Then I poured my coffee out, made a fresh cup, walked out onto the porch, sat down in the rocking chair my father built before I was born, and watched the sun finish climbing over the barn. I figured I had about 40 minutes before the phone started ringing again, and I wanted to enjoy the quiet. Let me back up, because to understand why I was smiling on that porch instead of crying, you need to know who I used to be before I became the silly old man in my son's eyes. My name doesn't matter much for this story. What matters is that I grew up the third of 7 kids on a played-out cotton farm outside Lubbock, and I left home at 17 with $82 in a duffel bag. I worked oil rigs in the Permian. I worked pipelines in Wyoming. I bought my first small parcel of land in 1976, sold it for triple in 1979, and from then on, I was in the business of buying things people thought were worthless and selling them to people who realized they weren't. By the time I was 45, I owned pieces of 7 oil leases, 2 trucking companies, and a feed supply business that covered 3 states. I retired at 58, the year my wife was diagnosed. I sold most of it. The trucking companies. The feed business, everything except the ranch and a portfolio that, last time I bothered to check, was worth somewhere north of $30 million. I never told my son, never told my daughter either, though she passed in 2004 before all this. And I miss her every single day. My wife and I lived simple. We didn't take fancy trips. We drove a 15-year-old pickup. We wore the same boots until they fell apart. I think my son grew up assuming we were just middle-class folks scraping by, and we let him think that. His mother always said money should make a person quiet, not loud. She was right about most things. She died in the spring of 2019. Pancreatic. She fought it for 2 years and didn't complain once. And after she was gone, I sat down with my attorney, an old buffalo of a man who'd been handling my business since 1981. And I made some changes. I moved the ranch into an irrevocable trust, the Buchanan Land Trust, after my wife's maiden name. I named myself as the lifetime tenant, which means I get to live there and use the land until I die. But ownership? That sits inside the trust, and a trust is controlled by 3 people: my attorney, my old business partner, and a woman who used to be my late daughter's college roommate, who I've trusted with my life for 20 years. My son's name appears nowhere. Not as trustee, not as beneficiary, not on a single deed, title, or document anywhere in the state of Texas. I did it for a reason. I'd been watching him for years. The way he looked at things. The way his wife looked at things. The way his wife looked at things. The way they talked about their mother's funeral, mostly worrying about what color suits they should wear. The way they'd visit twice a year, eat a meal, ask me 3 questions about my health, and then casually steer the conversation toward estate planning. My wife noticed it before I did. On her deathbed, she squeezed my hand and said, "Don't let him have it. He won't love it. He'll just sell it." She was looking right at me when she said it, like she was making me promise. I promised. So now back to that morning on the porch. About 20 minutes after I hung up, the phone rang. It was my son's wife this time. I let it go to voicemail. She left a long message about how we need to talk like adults and how I was making this difficult for everyone. Her voice had that bright, sharp edge it gets when she's trying to sound reasonable and isn't. I didn't call back. At 9, I called my attorney. I told him what had happened. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, "Well, we've been waiting for this, haven't we?" I said, "I reckon we have." He told me to do nothing. Don't pack. Don't argue. Don't even answer the door if anyone showed up. He'd have papers filed in Lubbock County by the end of business that afternoon. He said, "Let them swing at air, friend. Let them tire themselves out." So I did. By 11 that morning, a moving truck pulled up. 2 young men got out. They walked up to the porch with clipboards and a friendly attitude, asking where I'd like them to start. I offered them iced tea. I told them there'd been a misunderstanding and they might want to call their dispatcher before they unloaded a single dolly. They looked at each other. The younger one stepped away and made a call. I sipped my tea and watched a hawk circling over the south pasture. About 10 minutes later, the moving truck pulled out, kicking up dust as it turned back onto the county road. That was the first wave. The second wave came at 2 in the afternoon, my son and his wife. They'd driven up from Dallas. They came up the porch steps fast and loud with the energy of people who'd been rehearsing their lines the whole 4-hour drive. My son stood there in his pressed slacks and his expensive sunglasses and said, "Dad, this has gone far enough. I don't know what game you're playing, but the buyers are real, the money's already moving, and you are embarrassing this family." I gestured at the chairs. Neither of them sat. His wife said, "We have power of attorney. Did you forget that? You signed it 3 years ago when you had that fall." I smiled at her. I remember that day, by the way. I'd slipped on ice coming out of the diner in town, bruised my hip, spent 1 night in the hospital under observation. They'd flown in. They'd been so concerned, so gentle. They'd sat by my bedside and slid a stack of papers under my pen and told me it was just in case, just for emergencies, just so we can help if anything bigger happens. I'd signed it. I was on painkillers. I was missing my wife. I trusted them. But here's the thing about power of attorney. It's a powerful document. It can do a lot. It can pay bills. It can manage accounts. It can sell property. What it cannot do, no matter how cleverly worded, is sell property that doesn't belong to the person who granted the power of attorney. I told her that, slowly, in language I knew she'd understand. I said, "You have power of attorney over me, not over the trust. The ranch is not in my name. It hasn't been in my name in 6 years. You sold something that wasn't there to sell. Whatever contract you sign with those buyers, it's worthless paper. And I'd guess by tomorrow, the title company is going to figure that out. And then those buyers are going to want their $8 million back. From you. Not from me." My son's face changed. It was slow, like watching water freeze. His wife sat down hard in the other porch chair. She forgot all about her plan. She just sat there. He said, "You're lying." I said, "Son, you've known me your whole life. I've told you a lot of things you didn't want to hear. I have never once lied to you. I'm not lying now." He pulled out his phone. He started scrolling, looking for something. His thumb was shaking. He said, "The title company verified. We have the deed. We have the deed, Dad. I'm looking at the closing paperwork right now." I said, "What name's on that deed?" He read it out loud. "Buchanan Land Trust." I said, and who's the grantor?" He paused. He scrolled. He paused again. He said, it says you. Your signature. Notarized." I said, "Show me." He turned the phone around. I looked at it for about 10 seconds. Then I started laughing again. This time I didn't try to stop. Because the signature on that document wasn't mine. It looked like mine. It was close. Whoever forged it had clearly seen my real signature and practiced. But there was a flourish at the end of my last name that I haven't used since 1994. My wife had teased me about it for years until I finally dropped it. Anyone who'd really seen me sign anything in the last 30 years would know that. But what really got me laughing was something else, something my son didn't know. Every single document related to the Buchanan Land Trust requires the signature of all 3 trustees, not the grantor. The trustees. I am not a trustee. I am the lifetime tenant. The trust was specifically structured so that I cannot sell, transfer, encumber, or otherwise touch the underlying real estate, even if I wanted to, even if I were under duress, even if someone, hypothetically, were to forge my signature on a document trying to convey property out of the trust. It's a vault, and my son had just tried to crack it with a butter knife. I told him this, calmly, the way you explain to a grandchild that no, the stove is hot, you cannot touch it. He sat down on the porch step, right there next to his wife, who hadn't said anything in 5 minutes. He said, "Then who did we sell it to?" I said, "I imagine you sold an idea to people who paid you $8 million in earnest money in escrow funds based on documents that were not legally enforceable. And I imagine those people are about to find out that their title insurance is going to fight them. And then the FBI is going to come around and ask some very pointed questions about wire fraud and forgery of a notarized document. Because that's a federal crime, son. You didn't just steal from me. You stole from them." His wife started crying. Not the pretty kind of crying. The other kind. I want to be clear about something. I did not enjoy this. I want to say I did. Part of me wanted to. I'd been carrying around this scenario in the back of my head for years, ever since my wife squeezed my hand on her last day. I'd imagined this moment, and what I'd say, and how it would feel. But sitting there on my own porch, looking at my only living child crumpled on the step where he used to sit and eat popsicles in July, I felt mostly tired, and a little sad, and a kind of grief that was different from losing my wife, but came from the same well. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't stop it either. What I told them next was this. I told them they had until sunset to get off my property. I told them I would not be pressing charges, but the title company would, and the buyers absolutely would, and there was nothing I could do about that even if I wanted to, which I didn't. I told them they could keep their power of attorney for what little it was now worth, but I'd be revoking it by Monday morning. And I told them, finally, that they would not be welcome back on this land. Not for Thanksgiving, not for Christmas, not when I died. Not ever. My son looked up at me. His eyes were red. He said, "Dad, please, we can fix this. I can pay them back. I just need time. I just need time. I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I made a mistake." I sat there for a long moment. Then I said, "Your mother told me on her last night that you would do this. I told her she was wrong. I told her I had raised you better than that. I was the one who was wrong, son. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. But I see it now. I stood up and walked inside and closed the door. I watched through the curtain. They sat on those porch steps for almost an hour. Then they got up and they drove away. The dust trailed behind their rental car all the way down the long gravel drive to the county road. And then they were gone. The next month was loud. Federal agents came. They were polite. They took statements. They took my phone. They gave it back. They came back twice more. The title company filed civil suits. The buyers filed civil suits. The Lubbock County DA filed criminal charges. My son and his wife were indicted in late August on charges of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, forgery of a notarized instrument, and elder financial exploitation, which in Texas carries an enhanced sentence when the victim is over 65 and the value exceeds $300,000. They tried to call me. From their lawyer's office. From their home. From numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. My attorney handled all of it. He's a good man. Their trial is scheduled for next spring. The prosecutor tells me they're looking at 12 to 20 years apiece if convicted on all counts. The plea deal on the table is 7 years and full restitution, which they don't have the means to pay. I'm told my daughter-in-law's parents flew in from Connecticut to sit with her one afternoon and told her in front of her lawyer that they would not be helping. Apparently they'd seen this coming too. The ranch is still here. The hay barn still catches that gold light every morning. The hawks still circle the south pasture. The trust pays the property taxes and the maintenance and the ranch hand's salary, and when I die, the trust will donate the entire 240 acres to the agricultural college my wife taught at for 22 years before she retired. They'll use it for a working ranch program for first-generation students. Kids who grew up like I did. Kids with $82 in a duffel bag. My wife's name will be on the gate. Buchanan. I think about her every morning when I drink my coffee. I tell her what the hawks are doing. I tell her about the calf that was born last week with the funny white patch over its eye. I tell her about the rain. I don't tell her about our son. She knew. She knew before I did. A few weeks ago, a young woman from a senior advocacy group in Lubbock came out to the ranch. She'd heard about the case from a contact at the DA's office. She asked if I'd be willing to speak at a town hall they were organizing about elder financial fraud. I told her I'd think about it. I thought about it for 2 days. Then I called her back and said yes, because here's what nobody told me when I was 65. Signing that power of attorney in a hospital bed with bruised ribs and a broken heart. Nobody told me that the people you raised, the people you loved, the people whose Halloween costumes you sewed, and whose bicycle wheels you straightened, and whose first heartbreak you held them through, those people can become strangers, not slowly, all at once. And by the time you see it, the documents are already signed. I want to say this to anyone out there my age who's listening. Please hear me. Get your house in order while your mind is sharp. Put your land in a trust. Put your land in a trust. Mut your accounts in a trust. Name trustees who are not your children. Trustees you can fire. Trustees who answer to a court. Hire an attorney who has handled elder fraud cases and ask them directly, what would my children have to do to take this from me? And then close every door they describe. Do not sign anything in a hospital bed. Ever. Not even for the people you love most. Especially not for them. Tell them you'll sign it when you're home, and you've slept and you've talked to your lawyer. If they push back, that tells you something. Listen to what it tells you. Make a video of yourself signing your real signature with the date and the witnesses and keep it with your attorney. Forgers are getting better. Banks are getting lazier. You need a paper trail and a video trail. And if you've already been hurt, if your kid is already taken from you, please don't keep quiet about it. I know the shame of it. I know the way it makes you feel like a fool. I know the way you'll want to protect them because they came out of you, because you held them as a baby, because somewhere underneath it all, they are still that baby to you. Press charges anyway. Call the FBI anyway. Get them anyway. Because every day you protect them is another day they hurt someone else's parent. Another day they pass that meanness on to their own kids. Another day the world has a little less justice in it. My wife used to say that love without consequence is just permission. She was a smart woman. I'm sitting on the porch right now. It's October. The cottonwoods down by the creek are turning yellow, and there's a coolness in the wind that wasn't there a week ago. The phone hasn't rung today. Most days it doesn't anymore. I miss my son. I want to be honest about that. I miss the boy he was. I miss the man I thought he was. I grieve him the way you grieve someone who died, except harder, because he didn't die. He just chose. And every day, somewhere in a county lockup waiting for his trial, he keeps choosing. That's the part nobody tells you about getting old. You think the worst things are the body breaking down, the knees, the back, the eyes. The worst thing is watching the people you made become someone you don't recognize, and realizing you can't fix it, and never could. But I'll tell you what I learned from 40 years of buying things people threw away. Sometimes what looks broken is just hidden. Sometimes the ground that nobody wants is sitting on top of something valuable. Sometimes the quiet man at the back of the room is the one who owns the building. And sometimes the foolish old cowboy on the porch in his patched-up jacket, the one his children think doesn't understand the modern world, the one they figure they can roll over in 20 minutes on the Tuesday morning. Sometimes that old man has been 3 steps ahead of them since the day his wife died and made him promise. I made her a promise. I kept it. The sun is going down over the south pasture now. The hawks have gone to roost. The ranch hand is closing up the barn. I can hear the cattle settling for the night, that soft lowing sound that I have loved my whole life. Tomorrow I'll drink my coffee. I'll watch the gold light hit the roof. I'll tell my wife about the day. And the day after that, I'll do it again. This is my land. It was hers. It will belong to kids who haven't even been born yet, who show up here someday with $82 and a duffel bag and the hope that hard work still counts for something in this country. It does. I promise you it does. You just have to be smarter than the people who want to take it from you. And sometimes, you have to be willing to let your own son sit in a cell and learn what consequence feels like. Because love without consequence is just permission. And I gave him permission for too many years. Not anymore. The light is fading. The dogs are at my feet. The coffee is cold. I'm going inside. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm sitting here now. Months after that morning, my son called me at 6:47, and I find myself thinking about cause and effect more than I ever did when I was younger. Back when I was 25, hauling pipe in Wyoming, I thought the world ran on luck and grit. Now, at 73, I see it different. Every single thing that happened on my ranch that summer, every single thing was planted years before by somebody's hand. Mine, my wife's, my son Wyatt's, even his wife Adeline's. We were all just harvesting what we'd put in the ground. I planted the trust in 2019 because my wife squeezed my hand and made me promise. That was a quiet act, done at a kitchen table with my old attorney Joel Tarrant, with no fanfare. But it was a seed. 6 years later, that quiet seed grew into the thing that protected my home and gave my son the consequence he needed to finally, maybe, become a man instead of a taker. Wyatt and Adeline planted something too. They planted small thefts of attention, small lies, small calculations, years of looking at their mother like she was a wallet. Years of asking about my health, like they were checking the oil on a car they hoped to inherit. Those seeds grew too. They grew into a forgery, and a federal indictment, and a marriage that's already collapsing inside a county jail. I want to tell you something I believe with my whole chest. Goodness is not soft. Wisdom is not passive. Strength is not loud. The man who loves his family the most is sometimes the one who must be the most prepared to disappoint them. I loved my son enough to make him face what he did. That is harder than letting him walk. Anybody can let somebody walk. It takes something else to stand on the porch and say, "No, you will answer for this, and I will not save you from it." If you're listening to my voice and you're somewhere in your 60s or your 70s, I want to ask you to do three things. Be moral, even when nobody's watching, especially with your own kin, because they're watching, even when you think they're not. Be wise, which means seeing people as they actually are, not as you wish they were, and arranging your affairs accordingly while your mind is still sharp. And be strong, which doesn't mean angry. It means willing. Willing to follow through. Willing to feel the pain of consequence and not flinch. I miss the boy Wyatt used to be. I miss him every morning when I drank my coffee. But I do not regret what I did, because the world only stays decent when decent people refuse to subsidize cruelty, even when that cruelty wears the face of their own child. The hawks are circling again over the south pasture. The light is gold. My wife's name will outlive me on that gate, and the ground I bought with $82 in a duffel bag will feed kids who haven't been born yet. That's how you win. Quietly. Years ahead. With your house in order.